Good evening, and welcome to White Feather Project Counsel of Men podcast, an effort of the Trinity Episcopal Church in Charlottesville, Virginia. It's nice to be here, and it's nice to have you with us. My name is Warren Hammonds, and I'm one of the co-hosts for this show, and I'm here along with, of course, my other co-host, Phil White.
Philip White, hi.
And you'll get to know him real well during this episode. In fact, it'll be a interview that I am having with Phil. Because of the expertise that he brings to this conversation. You are seeing us live at this very moment, although most of this segment will be an airing of a previously recorded session where I do interview Phil. It may look live, but it's just pre-recorded and shown tonight as this episode. After this segment, we may have time for comments and questions that come our way during the podcast. So feel free to use that chat area if you wish. Before we get there, let me say very quickly that if you have not already seen our preview episode called What Brings Us, we encourage you to do so. It can be found on this same podcast channel, and it's called Episode 1, and it's titled What Brings Us. And it sort of serves as our promotional video of what we're going to be doing over the course of the next months together. It tells you a little bit about what brought us, what our interests are in this, and what we hope that this podcast will be and provide. So we encourage you to watch that as sort of a good setup of what we'll be doing over the course of this work together. But for now, here is this week's episode that's previously recorded called The Man Box. Hello and good evening, and welcome back to the Counsel of Men, brought to you by the White Feather Project. My name is Warren Hammonds, and I am here with my co-host, Phil White.
Hello.
And we have an exciting session planned for you today. We're actually going to do a personal interview with Phil. Phil brings a whole lot of experience and expertise into this project from the perspective of working with men and boys. So, since our focus is on engaging men in the conversation regarding race reconciliation, racial justice, we thought we would at least start this part of the conversation with Phil and focus this session on why it's important to engage men. So let's just start right out. I'd like to say thank you for being here, not only as my co-host, but as the authority on the subject tonight.
A big term.
And in starting out, I'd just like to ask you, why or how did you take such a personal interest in working with boys and men?
You know, it's there's a phrase that those of us that have been able to do this work over the years, and it has become a bunch of comrades throughout the state of Virginia that I've been able to interact with, and we all have come to the conclusion that we don't choose this type of work. This type of work chooses you. And it's something that has a kind of spiritual ministry to it, in a certain component in regard to this work. And I was asked to, when I was doing social work here in Central Virginia, I was asked to go with the director of the agency I was with to the Department of Social Services in Virginia Beach, and that was about 2000. We did that. And it was from that interaction with those brothers there who had a fatherhood program, and to my knowledge, it was the only one in Virginia at that point, which is now the oldest program. We went there, and it was from that contact with watching those men in that group setting that really changed my life and changed my partners that was there with us from that day forward. And we knew we needed to bring that type of program back here to Central Virginia so that men could have a place to come and deal with so many multiple issues that men experience as fathers, as men here in the country. So that's how it opened up for me. And I got involved with that and started doing research and just led to building a program that we went operational in 2003 and has pretty much kind of been a significant part of my life since that time. So that's how I got started.
And I'm sure we'll talk a lot more about men and specifically, and how men deal with issues of difficulty, as we will get into. But let me move a little bit and ask a question of if you think we're doing well raising our sons.
There's been a lot of research done on how we are doing it in America as far as raising boys. And I guess the short answer to that is we can do better. And I think it's not intentional in regard to how parents raise boys, but it results in a lot of disconnect that we see in regard to our emotional development. And our boys, when you think about this whole sense of our boys, you know, it's just this thing of being tough, and we start talking to our boys in that way at a very young age, and that kind of training carries on into when we talk about boys and teenagers and adult men and fathers. Those what we call that social conditioning of boys that starts so early can result in a lot of negative consequences, because when you start telling little boys don't cry, toughen up, man up, all that kind of stuff, it really limits their ability to be comfortable with their emotions. And the sad part about that is that most boys, you enter into you get into your teenage years and you get into relationships and you're trying to date girls and you don't realize that relationships it's an emotional event. That's all relationships are. It's just all the elements of your emotionality. But we're not being allowed to to display a range of emotions as boys and men. So no, I guess the short answer is that we need to do better in regard to allowing boys to be emotionally free. If I had to do it over with even with my own son, I would I would be more conscious of his emotional state. When we would ask our boys in particular, how you feeling? And the universal response is, I'm all right. And then we leave it at that. You see, rather than saying, well, let's talk about it. Let's sit down and talk. Now, how was school today? It was okay. And, those kind of responses really doesn't get at the heart of what's really going on with us as boys and men. And that 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 has put us, you heard me talk a lot about this box, this man box. And that term was introduced many, many years ago by Paul Kivel of the Oakland Men's Project. And Paul is still active in the work that he's doing. And that he was the first one that I got that term from, the man box. And then Tony Porter and Ted Bunge out of New York, they called to men, did a lot of work, a lot of workshops, a lot of training around this man box. And it does kind of speak to this thing that we are not conscious of some of the damage that we are doing to boys as it relates to their emotional development. So we got a lot of work still to do in regard to that.
Okay.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Well, that actually leads to a whole wealth of questions. You just answered that question, and I have several more to ask.
Okay.
But and I want to come back to the man box in just a moment.
Okay.
But before I go there, let me deal with that social, the whole socializing aspect that you brought first.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do hear phrases like "just man up,"
yeah,
or when you hear phrases like "oh, just be a man,"
yeah, right.
Are we doing our boys or other men a disservice by saying those, or how would you deal with that? Are you suggesting don't even go there?
I was last week I was listening to a interview on this podcast, I guess called a podcast, The Breakfast Club. And they had this brother on the show, brother by the name of Jason Wilson from Detroit. And he's gotten a lot of attention in regard to him addressing this particular issue. And he said exactly what I normally had concluded too when we talk about this man up and be a man, that it's hard to try to be something you don't really know what it means to be. You could have a room full of 10, 15, 20 men and ask them to define what constitutes a real man or what's a man. You're probably going to get 20 different definitions of what it means to be a man. It is such an elusive term that I have concluded over the years in my work and research that I try to get men to stop saying that, as far as man up and I'm a grown man. Because I used to always ask guys, what constitutes you being a grown man? Is that more than just being a man? Men say I'm a grown man. What does that mean? And a lot of men just contribute that to material stuff, performing. When I had my first kid, when I got my first car, when I got my first apartment, when I got my first job, all of that stuff. Again, totally separated from the emotional welfare of themselves as a physical creature. So man up is, to me, it's like chasing the wind. It's like you trying to get somewhere with something that you really can't really define what it means and what state in your life. If I had to put a number on it, I don't think we as men, particularly in America, kind of get to a sense of being somewhat comfortable with being a male and being a person, being a son, being a father, being a friend, till we probably get later on, late 30s, early 40s, before we settle down to a sense of just having some sense of consistency in our lives. So it's very elusive, and I don't think we can really define when we start using terms like man up. It's a cute term, but it doesn't give men any sense of direction, so to speak, as to what it is that I'm supposed to be doing to meet that definition of man up.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. And it's obvious that when we use those phrases in our lives, man up or be a man, we're using them from more of a negative perspective. Like change something about what you're doing now, whether or not it's crying or whether or not it's showing our vulnerable, tender side, which may not be well thought of in society by collective men. So we're using it more as a negative. So I do want to go back to the man box now. Okay. So you've mentioned it a couple of times, a couple of times tonight, and even in our first session, you mentioned the man box. Explain a bit more about what you mean by that.
It's these, the term social conditioning is these expectations that start early with boys. It's like, you remember when you have a son, I have a son, and most guys that I know that have, or they find out, they go to the doctor and they find out that when the wife is carrying the baby, that, oh, it's going to be a boy. That creates a certain energy in fathers that it's taking them to a whole nother level of expectation. I'm gonna have a son. I gotta get ready. I've heard so many men that get so excited. I'm having a son. I got my first son. It's okay, and it's like having a daughter that's a more nurturing type of experience for fathers. Taking care of my daughter. I'm gonna be her protector, and men say stuff like, "Got to make sure keep my gun by the door," just all that kind of jokingly stuff they say, but keep the boys away and all that. So you're gonna protect your daughter, but when it comes to having a son, it's all about preparing him to deal with life, or deal with the street, just deal with some of the challenges you're going to face walking in this space in America as a man. And you got to get him ready. Because you almost anticipating that he's going to have some challenges. We want to get him ready for that. So yeah, we in that man box, and that's when we put our boys in there at an early age, and it's the expectations are so vast, and it creates challenges that many boys would never ever meet. You see, so it from the very beginning, and it's not intentional. It is meant to try to prepare them and help them. But in our mythology of what constitutes reaching that term of being a strong man, we create a lot of holes in their soul, and that man box is symbolism of that trying to keep a young boy, a teenager, in this world of expectations that really is more harmful than good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's a box that we create. Society or the culture of men,
yes,
because of our expectations of what manhood should be.
Yeah.
But it's really a false box.
That's a good term to use. It's a false box, because you cannot, or we should not limit a person's potentials to be whatever they want to be, however they want to be creative, however they want to explore their world as a male. And the same thing for females, but we kind of want to box them in.
But where it may not be false is when that box that we've defined and created force males to stay in it, or keep them from expanding outside of that box because of our expectations.
Expectations can really limit a person's natural potentials or natural skills that they have. I'll share with you this. This is perfect timing for this. Back in the 80s, around the mid-80s, the Chicago Bears professional football team, I think that was the year, I can't remember the exact year in the 80s, when they had the strong team, Walter Payton, and Just a wonderful
Willie
player.
Golf.
Woody Golf was on the
Golf,
team.
yeah.
He was a receiver. And Willie went somewhere, I don't know if it was with family or somewhere, but he went and saw some a ballet, and he got totally fascinated by the male dancers, just how their physicality and their physique, and they just look. It was just a perfect model of an athlete, and he was amazed at how skillful and graceful they were able to leap from a flat-footed on the floor to just jump several feet and land like a bird on the ground. And being a receiver, for people that throw this game called football, every position has a certain skill base. And as a wide receiver, you're taught early that you go get the ball. You don't wait for the ball to come to you. You catch it at its highest point. So you got to go up and get it. So he got fascinated by what he was watching in this ballet, that this brother started taking ballet lessons. He started taking ballet lessons. And then my further research, I think the wide receiver from Pittsburgh Steelers back in the day, Lynn Swann, he started taking ballet lessons. And several other NFL players started taking ballet lessons. So Mr. White here, doing my groups, I started using that as an exercise with the men. And I would just say to them, what did your boy come home one day, Dad, and he says to you, hey, Dad, hey, I want to take some ballet lessons. How will you feel? Oh, Lord, please. Ooh, that was a tough moment. Because the men, not my, no,
Not my son.
Not my son. No, ballet. What you talking about, Mr. White? No, no, ballet. And when I would explain to them what we learned from Willie's experience, it softened them some. But initially, it was major rejection.
Wow.
Stereotypes, and we talk about just stereotyping people. Yeah.
That box.
Trying to keep them in the box.
Okay. So we want to break outside that box.
Got to get out of that box. That box is a hazardous place to be.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of men stay in that box for their entire lives, and it just limits you in so many areas of your life.
And of course, our other focus of this whole conversation, not just on men, but on race, it's going to create even a little bit more of a challenge to be vulnerable, to be open.
Yes.
Maybe to show some tenderness off and on, because race issues present those difficulties.
Yes.
More barriers.
Right.
More divides that we're going to have to help conquer or help get over. So outside the man box.
Yes.
So thank you very much for joining us this evening for this episode of the Counsel of Men. And we hope you enjoyed it. We didn't get any questions or comments tonight to respond to. That's an encouragement for next time, next episodes coming up. I will say that as you view that but the promotional video that I mentioned earlier in this segment called What Brings Us, there may be some questions and comments that you would want us to address in future sessions together and on future podcasts. So you can always email us and write those comments in as well. Now, to bring us home for this session, I'm going to turn it over to the expert here, Phil White. Thanks for letting me interview you earlier, and thanks for being here again tonight, my friend.
Thank you, Juan.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you. We are very excited to launch. This is our first session. We're very excited to launch this work. It is a work that we find very dear to our hearts, and we think that it can really address the issues that we feel are so important for men. This is where we as men got to take some accountability for the state that our country is in, particularly when it comes to violence, and that we need to be the gatekeepers. We need to be the head to try to come together as men, all men, and really take a look at how we're doing emotionally, how we're raising our boys, and go from there. And I'm at that age now where I came across this song that I had known for many years, but I heard it and it kind of spoke to directly to men. I didn't know that 10, 20 years ago. And it's a song by the Pointer Sisters. And I would encourage all of you to take the time to go on your music site and listen to this song, because the lyrics in this song speaks directly to men. It's called Yes We Can. Yes We Can. And I just want to share with you a little bit of the lyrics from this song that kind of just stuck in my soul. And I told Warren, and I told all of the folks that's connected to us here with this work, that I wanted to share this with you today. So the song is titled Yes We Can. Now the time for all good men to get together with one another. We got to iron out our problems and iron out our quarrels and try to live as brothers and try to find peace within without stepping on one another, and show respect to the women of the world. Remember, you all had mothers. We got to make this land a better land than the one in which we live. And we got to help each man be a better man with the kindness he can give. I'll stop right there. Check that song out. It is a powerful, the lyrics in this song, it was like, man, yeah, that speaks to us, man. And I think that's one of the things we want to bring to this session week after week. Now we'll be coming back to you on the bi-weekly sessions. We'll be back on live on this YouTube channel on March 29th at 6 p.m. We say we're going to be doing bi-weekly, but we'll let you know as we on live that'll be our schedule. So we are just grateful, as Warren and I have said to each other many times. It's like we both share this space. We have learned a lot from each other and with each other, and we're looking forward to learning things from you as well. We don't know all the answers, and we think that us as together, a collective group, we can present some topics that's going to motivate men to really kind of take a deep look into themselves and how they can be part of this work that we're trying to do here, is to help us be able to just find a better place where we can live and be. So we thank you. We thank you so much for joining us. And we want to thank Quadrum Studios. That's where we are, just doing these sessions for us, and we're very grateful to the people here for allowing us to be in this wonderful studio setting. So that's it for us this evening.
Before we totally tune out, let me just say that the next session on March 29th will be the second part of the interview that I have with Phil, and it's going to be entitled Iron Sharpens Iron. So we welcome you to that in 2 weeks and hope to see you. Yes. Thanks for this time together.
Thank you. Good night.